Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Cultural Intelligence as a Success Tool for Business Growth. My name is Michelle Eisenberg, and I am a program assistant here at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the NASDAQ Center is a nonprofit that's building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. So as you will see in the chat in a moment, the NASDAQ Center provides programs, resources, and exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So definitely make sure to check out those links and resources in the chat. And then just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First, let us know where you are dialing in from in the chat. We always love to connect. And second, we are going to open up for live Q&A at the end of the event. So please make sure to submit your questions for us in that Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation, and we will try our best to get to all of them. And of course, none of what we do could be possible at the center without all of the amazing support from our sponsors, including NASDAQ, Lehigh University, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Wells Fargo, the Nareet Foundation, Walmart.org, JP Morgan Chase, BPM, HubSpot for Startups, and Google Cloud. We are humbled by their contributions and hope you are grateful too. And so before we get started, we always like to launch a couple polls to step back, see how everyone here is doing today. This first one is going to ask, how are you feeling about your business? Fearful, anxious, surviving, or optimistic? We'll give it a few moments for folks to respond here. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. All right, I'll give it one more moment. Awesome. All right, I'm going to end this poll and share these results. All right, it looks like optimism coming up in the lead. Always great to see, but definitely some feelings of surviving anxiety and fear in the audience. So hopefully this shows that whatever you are feeling, you are not alone. And hopefully this conversation will help alleviate some of those feelings. So I'm gonna stop sharing this poll and launch that second one. What is keeping you up at night? Finance, sales, marketing, scale, pivot, team, or surviving. And this one just tells us a little bit more about your current needs as an entrepreneur so we can make sure the programs and resources we are developing continue to be meaningful and valuable to all of you. So I'll give this just a couple more moments. Awesome. We got folks from London, the DC metro area, Chicago, New York, Atlanta, Fort Mill, South Carolina, Portland, Oregon. Welcome, welcome. So great to have folks from really all over the place. Super exciting. Azerbaijan, welcome, welcome. Awesome. I'm going to give it one more moment on this poll. All right, I'm gonna end this poll and share these results. All right, it looks like finance coming up in the lead, sales close behind, but we got needs all across the board. So thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. I'm gonna stop sharing this poll. And without any further delay, please join me in giving the warmest welcome to our special guest, Bisila Bokoko, United Nations honoree and executive chair, award-winning entrepreneur, author, and global leadership expert, and founder and CEO at BBES. Bisila, such a pleasure to have you here with us today. Super excited for this conversation.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much. I'm very excited and optimistic today, too.
Oh, wonderful. Love to hear it. Amazing. Well, before we dive right into the conversation, I'd love to hear, from your own words, just maybe 30 to 60 seconds of who you are.
Well, I am Bisila Bokoko. I'm a cultural hybrid. I was born in Spain. My roots are African, but I live in New York 24 years. So I'm a little bit all over the place. And I study law and economics. And I never thought that I would become an entrepreneur because as a daughter of immigrants, I was thinking I need to look for safety and I want a job that really I stay forever. So I had this mentality, but I switched to become an entrepreneur because I was fired from a job and that changed completely my perspective. And I decided to become an entrepreneur. I always been connected with international business. And I'm very excited to help business to grow from local to global. And that's basically what I do. I consult and myself, I also an entrepreneur and I try to also go global.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, it sounds like you have so much, just different perspectives from the experience that you've had around the world and through these different work experiences. And so really excited to dive into this conversation on cultural intelligence for business growth. And so I guess just to kick things off, I know something that many entrepreneurs in the audience are likely struggling with is, maintaining brand consistency while adapting to, some of the diverse cultural contexts in these markets that we're exploring. It can be a daunting task, especially for these startups looking to maybe expand internationally, or just into new markets. And so entrepreneurs kind of have to find the right balance to remain authentic while resonating with those local markets. And so how, from your experience, can entrepreneurs balance, embracing cultural differences while maintaining their brand's core identity, especially when expanding into these new markets?
It's a great question. And before I dive in, I would like to point out that when we talk about cultural intelligence, we have sometimes a tendency to believe that cultural intelligence only applies to people who really want to expand in international businesses. But it doesn't, because the first culture that we have is the culture that we have ourselves. And you could be in the same environment, again, in the same city, and there is different cultures, right? Like in New York City, I live in New York, and there is many cultures. So I want to go beyond, is a deeper meaning what it means culture. But basically, the way that you maintain really the core values of your brand and do not compromise that when you're trying to go into international markets is by adapting the cultural adaptation. And you have to do this really well. And I think the first point is define what is your non-negotiable values. So it's good to make a list of the things that for you are really, when you start your company, when you start your brand, what is really your values? And I think it's always a good exercise to really do yourself, no matter what is your end up game, the end game. So I think that when you know really your core values, there are certain values that no matter where you go, you will never change. And I think this is very good to have this clarity. The second one is think about localize. It doesn't mean that you have really to dilute your brand. So your brand has to have really the essence and you localize your brand. So I think that is important to know because sometimes you think that you have to completely change the concept and that's not it. You're just going to respect the values that you want to find in that culture. You're going to make your own research. I mean, leverage cultural intelligence doesn't mean that you have to change completely. It's an adaptation. It's not a completely change. And I think what it helps is also collaborate with the local experts. Sometimes, you need people, and that's the reason why when we expand our networks, it's helpful because you're going to have information from other sites. And I think it's good to just connect with these local experts and see what is really essential when you go into these markets that you should take into account. And then you have to create a brand experience. And the brand experience has to be consistent. It doesn't mean that you're going to change the brand experience. So the brand experience is really what is the brand about. It's your history. So that is important. And then engage with the local communities also. You engaging with the local communities, being with them, you're going to understand more what is their needs. So at the end, it's a blending between brand consistency and the cultural customization.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I love this idea of, it's so much more deeper and nuanced, than it definitely does apply to, startups that are looking to expand into global markets, but also applies to startups looking to expand into just other local markets that, are new to them and they may be unfamiliar with. And so really love this idea of talking to those local experts, talking to the local community, really getting to understand their needs, their challenges, what's real for them. Is such a great starting point. So thank you. Love that advice. And I think in this, I think it's really important that you mention values as kind of like a foundational element to all of these conversations that you might have with customers. And a lot of founders can be really wary of making cultural missteps that can damage their brand's reputation or hinder expansion. And sometimes it can just be as simple as failing to acknowledge a cultural nuance. And so understanding these pitfalls, I think, can be really important in helping to avoid setbacks. So any examples you can share from your experience of maybe how lack of cultural insight hindered business growth for yourself or for someone you know, and what lessons entrepreneurs can take away from those experiences?
Absolutely, there are many. Well, for example, it was a company that they have a corporate color in blue, royal blue. And when they were expanding in Southeast Asia, they were thinking that they're going to refresh the brand and they choose the light blue without knowing that light blue is a sign of mourning and death in that. So that definitely destroyed completely their possibilities in that market because they didn't really take that into account. So one lesson is that you, as an entrepreneur, you must to understand the cultural associations in colors, in symbols. Even when when you're gonna design your products, you have to take that into account. And for example, I'm gonna give an example of a company that really everybody knows, Starbucks, when they expand in Australia, for example. They were thinking that because they have such a global success and they expand, that they will be extremely successful in Australia, but they have to close many of the stores because what they didn't really make the research to understand that it was already a culture of coffee there, special coffees and the stores and everything. So they didn't really make a difference when they came in. So sometimes it's important to understand that avoid the one size for all. It doesn't work. So I think this is one of the lessons. And a company from Spain that they produce onions, fried onions already, that they do it basically for restaurants because, when you do the Spanish omelet, the tortilla de patatas, I mean, when you cut so many onions in restaurants, you want to stop crying. So they have a logo that it was non-fried more. And when it was presented in the US market, they presented the way they sell them in Spain, and it's in a can. I remember it didn't work because in the American market, people is very busy. They like the visibility. They like to know what product they buy. So they were a little bit stubborn to don't change because they said, oh, we always did things this way, right? And in this case, they lost the opportunity to really make impact in the market because they didn't really listen to what the market is. And the fact that for one of the things that here is important is to look at the product and know what is inside. And another example, for example, is Chevrolet, the car company. When they moved in Latin America, they wanted to launch a product called Nova. And what happens is that in Spain, Nova means it doesn't go. So also don't repair in the language localization. It's important. So I think it's important to make some cultural research, just rely on experts that they do the market, and then think about adaptation and not standardization is also very important, and respect and be sensitive about the customs. And that requires, to really become high IQ, CQ.
Yeah, absolutely. I think these examples are great and really demonstrate like how deep you have to go in understanding these markets to really ensure that you're connecting with them on a level that makes them feel understood. And so look, I in possessing kind of a deep understanding of your audience, cultural intelligence can allow entrepreneurs to kind of align their products more closely with customer needs. And so, what ways, from your experience, can cultural intelligence really take those needs that you've understood from your audience and improve the research and development process? And any examples maybe you could share where that culturally informed approach maybe led to a breakthrough product or service?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's absolutely connected, the level of understanding of cultural values and the social norms. For example, designing the companies that design products that they have to align with the values and the needs of the people. Just to give you an example, Procter and Gamble, for example, designed a product for women in Africa and in India, a sanitary product. And they adjusted because of the reasons. I mean, the weather is different. They don't have access to water. So they have to create pads that they stay longer. And that makes them be the leader in the market because they really thought about how these women live and what is their lifestyles and everything. So even for designer products, it's important to take that into account. Also, localize the product features that they can, you have to just have adjustments. Sometimes a product works, but you need to have different features for that product based on the cultural habits of the people. And it also helps you to anticipate to the market needs. It helps you to see to the future what kind of problems you can solve that are unique and specific for that particular market. And I think for doing that, you also have to do continually a consumer testing. You have to really have focus groups and see what is the, for example, for a food product, you have to know the dietary restrictions. And that could make you extremely, food companies, mostly, they know that when they go to a country, they have to adjust to the dietary needs of the people. For example, McDonald's created in India a hamburger made with potatoes, and that is very successful for them. Or for example, in Japan, they create a burger with shrimp or a teriyaki burger. So you really need to do that kind of research. What is what the people need? And it's going to help you to be ahead of the game.
Mm. Yeah, I love this idea of kind of thinking forward, like solving those needs, kind of like it's almost, kind of even as you're thinking about competitive research and where there are additional gaps in the market that you're going to be able to solve in the future. This idea of scenario planning is really important. So love that you brought that up. And I think, something else that a lot of startups, especially those in our audience, we have a lot of first-time founders or, businesses that are just kind of in their first few years, small team, maybe you're a solopreneur, and maybe you have a limited budget, and that can maybe make it more difficult to, conduct this kind of large-scale market research. And so some of these entrepreneurs need cost-effective, practical methods for gathering that cultural insight. And so, what are some practical tactics for these early stage entrepreneurs to begin to collect and integrate meaningful cultural insights, especially when there's limited research or limited resources for that kind of formal expanded market research?
Well, the good news is that now we're living in an era that is becoming much easier and easier. And the international market is becoming smaller and smaller thanks to the online business and the way that now we operate. So we have much more access to information. When I started in international business, it was very, very difficult to find this kind of resources, and you have to pay these consultancy firms and everything to move forward. But right now you have a lot of free, or at least friendly budget options. And I think one of the ways is the community engagement online, and you can find different groups that they can give you that information. And also you have industry groups and niche online sites that they can give you that information that you really need in the country. So I think to start this kind of online discussions would be a good way. There is Facebook groups, there is LinkedIn, we have also that. So there's many resources to do that. Another way is localized partnerships on micro influencers. Also, you can find people in that places that they can help you. Um, Local stakeholders, you can find people who really could be your ears and your ears and eyes in the market that could help you. And you also can have like online tools that they just have competitor analysis and know what other people is doing. And because the information is out there, maybe you're not ready just yet, but knowing what your competitors are doing is going to give you a little bit of information for you to start. And also the government and industry reports, they are free and sometimes you localize them inside. I would suggest also to go to the trade commissions. Many countries have trade commissions and they have that information available. And also the chambers of commerce. They have very suitable market research. I did so many when I was an intern, when I came to New York. Everyone who want to do business in the United States, so I know about shoes, I know about food, wines, and different industries from Spain. And now you also could have like alerts in Google Trends and see what's going on and get information about what is going on in other countries in your industry. And of course, if you can afford, just try to do pop-up events. I have the example of a company from Spain that before they wanted to open a store in the United States, they decided to do a pop-up experience. We started with 3 months, and then it worked so well that they extended for almost 9 months. But they give them a little bit of an idea about what the market wants. So if you can have that opportunity to make a pop-up, it's good. Or immersion trips. I have a company from Mexico who recently wanted to do a jewelry company and they wanted to come in the United States. And what they did is to really understand what is the dynamics of business here, what people are looking for, how they like it. And we were just days just looking at all these stores and moving in the city, talking with the locals, talking also with the owners of the stores to see if the business is good, is not. So you understand also the challenges that people go through. So that cultural immersion trips are also very, very valuable.
Love it. So many ideas there. And yes, so true that there's so many free and available resources that are out there to at least give you a healthy starting point.
Yes.
Um, and there's definitely this underlying theme for across these across these um ideas of just continuing to connect with those local experts, the local people who you're looking to serve. And so, I love this idea of local partnerships. That's definitely something that, we talk about in terms of, building strategic partnerships that, can really help you tap into a new community and better understand their needs in a way that you wouldn't have been able to before. So those kinds of things really open up opportunities. So wonderful. And kind of likewise, this is kind of like that was kind of on the realm of like limited budget. And then for those, maybe you do have a larger budget, maybe you have but you have a limited team. It's small, but it's critical for you as a leader to create an environment where the people that you're serving feel valued and empowered, and even that your team does. And so for your team specifically, how can cultural awareness, these kinds of cultural insights that we've talked about be embedded into leadership practices and maybe inspire team members from diverse cultural backgrounds, and encourage a more inclusive decision-making process across your team?
Well, it's always a win-win when you become a leader that has high CQ because that is going to help also to attract the right talent for you to expand. And it's
Mm.
going to really enhance the possibility for innovation. So I think the first point is self-awareness and education. And I think it's good to invest time in understanding your own cultural bias. We all have them. And I think because we are wired this way, we're not prone to understand other people's culture just by nature. I mean, we have to educate ourselves, and we have been that way because there's a social identity. The theory of the social identity says that we have a tendency to feel more comfortable with people who look like us or they have the same backgrounds. So obviously, it's not natural to be very cultural intelligent. I mean, it depends on your background, but I think that everyone could be when you have that self-awareness. And the first thing is to identify what is my biases. Maybe are conscious biases or are unconscious biases, but I need to understand them. And then you have to really be open-minded and encourage curiosity, ask the questions. Don't be afraid to really make mistakes. At some point, we're gonna make mistakes. I remember a few weeks ago, we were in Mexico, and one of my associates, when we arrived to this meeting in Ciudad de Juarez, just said, "Oh, I admire so much the Queen of the South. I'm a very big fan of this show, and I know a lot about Ciudad de Juarez, and the Queen of the South is so clever." And this associate didn't realize that people is extremely sensitive with how people portray Mexico with the narco traffic. So to just speak in that conversation about that show, it was not the most amazing thing. But you see, you just have to make mistakes, because when you are really going to different cultures and trying to do business, you're gonna make mistakes, and it's good to accept it and understand it. Okay, I have unconscious bias here. And I think it's also important to communicate inclusively. Find the right language for everybody to feel included.
Yeah.
And diversity communication methods, maybe some people are more visual, depending on the culture they come. Other people are more written. They will just go better with emails. Other people is nonverbal communication. So it really depends. So some people want more direct communication. And I think it's good to embrace the diverse perspective of your team and in decision making. That means inclusive meetings where you put everybody together in the room and you give them the possibility to all talk, because some cultures, they are more shy. So find ways that everybody is going to participate, and then create cultural advisory boards. I mean, sometimes even if you don't have like a huge company, I do have a group of friends that I call my advisory board, and I try to have friends from different cultures, and I have a dinner a month, and I meet these people, and some people are from different places, but they give me a perspective. So you connect with different cultures through that. So you don't need to have like a huge company. You can do it really at your own capacity. And then empathy and active listening. That two things are essential. Foster an inclusive work environment means that I'm gonna just really listen to people, not gonna look always to the quick response. I'm gonna just listen. And mentoring and sponsorship also. I think it's important to have mentoring and to find mentors that would help you to navigate all this world of different cultures, and also have a zero tolerance to discrimination, and understand also if you have prejudice, if you have stereotypes, and try to avoid them and understand them.
Mhm. Love that. So many layers there. And I love that you mentioned this, the need for mentors, totally an important aspect, not, just for the business, but for your own leadership abilities and these kinds of complex team dynamics that you need to navigate. And so yeah, and I think a lot of what you talked about, kind of goes back to understanding your values, communicating your values, and really finding that common ground through values with your team. And so I think that's kind of a great foundational uh point to make decisions from. And so kind of going off of this, continuing to dive into this, I know, we kind of talked about cultural missteps with customers. And so, I think for teams, team dynamics are really critical, and misunderstandings can quickly become disruptive. And so what is the role of cultural intelligence and conflict resolution within these diverse teams? And how can entrepreneurs really work to maintain harmony while embracing these different perspectives and backgrounds?
Well, it's a great question because a lot of people, they avoid the possibility to have diverse teams because they feel that they could bring a lot of conflict.
Mm.
And I think this is a very short-minded approach sometimes, because the conflict is part of the relationship with people. And the first thing that you have to do is to identify if the conflict really started by a culture, right? Because sometimes you have a tendency to just assume something. So the first thing that a leader has to do is not assuming that it has to do with culture or something like that. I think it's good to understand the root cause of the conflict. It is important, and recognize if there is a cultural trigger, because sometimes there is cultural triggers and something escalates because we have a different way of seeing things. And if you facilitate empathic communication, then you would understand that with some people you need an indirect approach, depending on the culture. Some cultures are extremely respectful and they don't really like a direct approach. You have to go indirect. And other people really need direct. It depends. For example, cultures like the US, direct, bullet points. Don't go around and around until you go to the point, right? In other cultures, you can go on around, and people feel even better, and they don't like this direct approach. So I think it's important that when it is a problem, that you understand how your team will behave when it's in this problem. And that's how you find really the mediation processes to solve this problem. And it maybe sometimes it's a group discussion, and people like the transparency to all sit in the room until you really get to the point of what is caused the problem and you can solve it, and it's great. But some people, they don't feel good with the mediation meetings in public. Some people, they want the one-to-one approach, because in cultures like in Asia, they really become very offended when they feel that they lose the face, of that you embarrass them if you bring out something in public. So this could bring a dispute. So this is why it's good to understand how people will understand the way you communicate as a leader, depending on the culture. And you have to create a safe space for everyone has the possibility to really feel comfortable in the way that it is. And I think this is why you have to encourage to have diverse voices and create different approaches to conflict, because if you hear that, they will give you ideas about how to target the conflict themselves.
Oh, there's so much good stuff in there. And I love this idea of, just really getting to know your team beyond, the point of hire. It's kind of like this continuous process of learning and understanding, what inspires them, and what helps them work well, and like where they thrive, and what you can do as a leader to, support that process of their success. So I love that you kind of emphasize, it's really on an individual basis sometimes. And so, it's really that deep understanding, getting to know individuals, and that's going to drive, or at least, kind of reduce some of those missteps that you may have with your team. And of course, just that openness to these diverse perspectives will always kind of be, a tenant in those spaces that you're kind of fostering. So I think that's wonderful. And we talked a little bit about this earlier. For startups who may be expanding into new markets, or whether that's, a global market, or a new localized market, it's navigating unfamiliar territory. And so how can entrepreneurs determine whether a cultural gap is an opportunity to innovate or maybe a potential barrier that requires adaptation?
Hmm. Well, I think you have to requires really careful evaluation of the market, the cultural context, and the consumer behavior. So you cannot take that lightly. I will start with two examples. For example, Starbucks in China, they when they tried to go there, they were thinking, okay, how are we going to do this? Because there is a culture of tea and how we're going to really install the cultural coffee. So what they realize is that they have to market it like something extremely innovative, an experience that is connected with luxury, with a social status, and the new generations they were looking for that. So they were able to really penetrate the market because of that. Google, for example, in Germany, when they launched the Street View, they were not successful at the beginning because they find a cultural resistance because Germans like their privacy. So they didn't want to show their houses in the Google Maps. And they have to change something and they create features that you can just put your house out of the street in
Right.
order to accommodate. So I think that you have to analyze the consumer openness to what you bring it. That's number one. Secondly, conduct a pilot test and then leverage the local knowledge, understand it, and balance risk and reward. So I think this is really how you can do that when you come into a market.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like it's going to depend on the situation and you kind of, yeah, I totally risk and reward analysis is probably going to be necessary, but I think those examples are great. And the idea of a pilot is definitely something that I know a lot of startups are, currently in the process of working on. And so that could definitely, help you kind of better understand make that decision of really what that opportunity is there. Um, so wonderful. And then you mentioned a little bit about local partnerships and I know managing cross-cultural strategic partnerships can be complex for early stage entrepreneurs, especially for those who maybe have only had, local partners before. And so when you're kind of expanding into these global markets, how can understanding these cultural nuances positively influence your communication and engagement with these potential channel partners when you're expanding into international markets?
Well, number one, it helps you to build trust. Then it helps you to establish credibility and then avoid misunderstandings.
Yeah.
That three things are important. And I think one thing that you could do to build trust and credibility is to adapt your communication styles. I mean, in places like US and Germany, you have a direct style, indirect maybe in Japan or India, you're going to use that. And also respecting hierarchy, for example. In some cultures, it's very important to respect that. In
Mm.
African cultures, in Korean culture, you need to have a hierarchy. And this is the way you build trust. You bring an elder, maybe, or somebody senior in the company to speak with you and to just navigate that communication, that culture. I think it's important also to have into account what is going to be the effective negotiation style that is going to work for that market and the relationship building. If you're going to make business in Spain, for example, you need to create a relationship. And also the Latino countries also is the same thing, or the Arab countries, you need to have a relationship. How do we build relationships in Spain around the table? You will be surprised that you have a 4 hours meal in Spain and
Yeah.
nobody speak business until they are already in the dessert and then maybe cognac and maybe a cigar. Then it's business really starts. So you need to understand that it's not okay to speak business when you sit down at the table. You wait. People want to know who are we making business with. So that is important in the culture to understand how important is that relationship building. And also, when it comes to negotiation, some countries, they have very fast negotiation. People make decisions, quick decisions. Like in the US, people, I love that. People make decisions immediately, but in other cultures, they take forever to make decisions. They tell you, yes, we're thinking about it. Yes, we're thinking about it. And you might become impatient, right? It's important also to customize the messaging for better engagement. Every message comes differently. So you have to also navigate the language barriers, because sometimes not only the translation has to be well, but what it means also in the country. Not translating is also the meaning that it has in that country, that particular words. Respect the holidays, respect the events that they have, when you have to take care of that. The conflict resolution and is the different expectations. People do it differently, and you have to adapt your leadership style to what is the style in that particular country. So if you're looking for a long-term collaborations, that is the things that you should do.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting, as your communication may change, but your values don't change, and that's kind of like the common thread across these different interactions that you may have with stakeholders or potential channel partners. So really being intentional, I love that with the way you're communicating, with the way you're negotiating, is so crucial. And just to switch gears a little bit, you mentioned earlier this idea of really taking the time to like evaluate your own cultural biases. And cultural biases can unintentionally limit market opportunities, kind of as through some of the examples that you demonstrated or shared with us, and even team effectiveness. And so, as early stage entrepreneurs are in the process of identifying and addressing these biases, or hoping to maybe conduct a self-assessment, how do you kind of recommend that they go about that? And what impact does confronting these biases really have on business growth?
But it's a win-win to become culturally savvy. And I think it's good to first reflect on your own experience and own background. Everything is done by yourself. So I think that when you revise also your own family history, your transgenerational, you're going to find out a lot of cultures are inside of you. So I think it's also important to pay attention to any negative reaction also that a culture or something might bring, because we have a tendency that we are very friendly towards cultures, and sometimes we don't like a culture. Why we don't like that culture? So ask ourselves that question. Sometimes we have a defense mechanism with some cultures because it comes maybe because you saw movies, or in your family you're being talked to about something. So it's very important to reflect on that experiences that could change the way you see things. And then I think to take cultural intelligence assessments test. There is so many and studies that you can take even online to see where you are. And I think it's good because then you can improve over time. And I think also identifying your patterns. What is your patterns? I mean, participate also in cultural events. I mean, you can go to different places and see how do you feel about different culture. If you are making a study to see, okay, maybe my product could work here. I mean, at the beginning, you can just go and see how do you feel about that culture, how I will feel being there. And I think it's really, it's also understand what is the prejudices and bias that you have, and to confront the stereotypes. And I think if you avoid a stereotype and you are very intentional about to do that, I mean, you will realize how impact you are making, and the impact that it's going to have is because it's going to enhance your decision making. Your decisions are going to be really based in your openness to the world. It's going to strengthen your relationship with people and your teams and everybody around you, for sure. It's going to improve also your talent management, how you're going to manage your talent, and you also to retain the right talent and to attract the right talent.
Yeah.
And it's going to support also your market expansion, because immediately when you become really culturally savvy, you're going to have that fire inside to just go out there. So you're going to have it. And this you're going to bring into your company. You're going to bring that enthusiasm. And I think it's important to bring that optimism to your teams. Even if you are a solopreneur, you're going to try also. You're going to have it inside you. And it's going to also foster innovation. So it's going to make you feel that you can think out of the box, and it's going to expand you. It's going to expand you first, and then your company and everything around you.
Yeah. Love that. And I love that you mentioned fostering innovation. I think it's obviously a crucial for startup success. And we've talked a little bit about that in terms of product service development and, some of the opportunities that we may tap into. And, in trying to, really embrace this openness of diverse perspectives, any just best practices, key tactics or techniques that entrepreneurs can, implement into their business to really foster an innovative environment within a startup driven by cultural intelligence and just any key ways to leverage these diverse cultural perspectives that you're, engaging with to drive creativity.
Yes. I think it's a good way could be to have diverse brainstorming sessions. I think is a good thing to have it. And also utilize the storytelling for ideas generation. I remember a company located in Texas that we worked with. He had different people from different countries working together. And we did a session of storytelling to just people tell their own stories. And it brought so many ideas about how to conduct business, and also it brought understanding of each other because people have different perspectives. So I think storytelling is very powerful because ever since we are human, we did that. We are full of stories, right? I think also cross-cultural mentoring is important. Also, per people from different team members from different cultures to work together in different projects. And also encouraging reverse mentoring. People from different cultures, if you're a minority inside a company, that they mentor the other people that they coming from the majority culture in the company. And of course, empathy mapping to understand how different groups might perceive a product, a problem, a challenge, a solution. There is different perceptions. So I think when you put yourself in other people's shoes and you understand, maybe they are very big shoes for you, maybe they are really tight. I think that the empathy mapping is a good system. And at the end is what it does is that it's open to new ideas and facilitates cross-cultural collaboration and promotes a safe space for experimentation. And that is what drives innovation at the end.
Interesting. Oh, I love it. Well, Priscilla, this has been such an incredible conversation, and we do have a little bit of time for Q&A from the audience. So if you are live here with us, make sure to drop your questions in that Q&A box. We'll try to get to as many as possible. Wonderful. Looking through some of these questions here. I guess just, overview, at a high level, any, tools, resources, books, that you would recommend to learn more about cultural intelligence, the importance of embracing diverse perspectives, and any thoughts there?
Well, I have several books about that. There is one book called Cultural Diversity. I know that it's two authors from an university. I don't remember exactly. That's the name of the book. But
We
I
can
think
find it.
but anyone can reach out and I will give them my list of books that I read. But I also believe that when you have an idea about where you want to go, read about that country. I think it's very important. It also try to learn a few words in that language because that connects you immediately with people. So just to show interest to the locals about what you want to do, it's important in understanding the history, and then you understand the dynamics of how they think. So instead of just reading a book about, of course, cultural intelligence is important, but it's something that you are practicing. And another thing I encourage people, even if you are in a low budget, you can travel with your mind. You can see a lot of documentaries. You can find so much information that you can really connect with the culture, or see a TV series to understand how these people think from other cultures. So there is no excuses to really tap into a new culture.
Ah, yes, love it. We have the resources, we have the technology. Amazing. Awesome. All right. So we have another question here, that I think is interesting. A term that comes up a lot in the business world is, or just in life in general these days. In certain contexts, is emotional intelligence. This person is, wondering if emotional intelligence plays a role in, cultural insights. If you have any thoughts on, the importance of emotional intelligence in leading your business.
I love this question because emotional intelligence is about to understand your own emotions, which I think is important, and understand that it's okay to not be okay.
Mm.
And I think it's important, like a leader, to understand that and give yourself permission to do that. Because when you do put yourself permission to be emotional and you can navigate your own emotions, then you know how to read the other people's emotions. And a person who is very intelligent emotionally is also that person who can read the emotions of the people who surrender them. So I think it's very important. It's also one of the skills that we need to master. And when it comes to international business, that goes together. But
Mhm.
also, I think it's important also the contextual intelligence also, which is to know where you're coming from to go where you're going. And I think it's also important to understand the history of the places that you want to do it, the history of your own company, to know where you're going, because you're working in the present. But to have this, it was going to help you to really have the insights that you need, but also to see the foresight. Where are you going?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I think it kind of goes back to that idea of storytelling and building empathy through, sharing our experiences with others and listening to the experience of others. And so I love, this idea of, again, it really, sometimes comes down to, your level of emotion and that how that can kind of influence the way that you lead in the decisions that you make. And so definitely, love that kind of perspective on the role it plays there in emotional or in cultural intelligence. Wonderful. So I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. Um, Awesome. All right. We have another question here. I think this is maybe related to like team dynamic.
Mhm.
But maybe the person can clarify if not. This person is, I think wondering, how to address a team member who doesn't see the need for cultural awareness or insight in the business, and
Yeah.
how you as a leader might address that.
I think a lot of people don't even really understand what is
Mm.
cultural intelligence.
Yeah.
And I think the first thing that the person needs to understand is what it really means that,
Hmm.
right? Because that is it's a superpower. It's a gift. So
Right.
if you are refusing to really really go to that road, I think you are really suppressing yourself of a huge amount of knowledge. Because in the global world that we live right now, with so much uncertainty, cultural intelligence is one of the capabilities that they're going to help you. So I think that we have to start to show them the benefits of what it
Mhm.
is. Because
Yeah.
normally when you're trying to install a system in a company, the way you communicate it makes the difference.
Mhm.
So go with the little yes at the beginning. So for doing that, sometimes you're not gonna just change his mind immediately or her mind, but the thing is to understand what benefits it's gonna have, even for themselves and in the company, and the benefits that's gonna have for the company. I mean, it's totally it's actually there is certain amount of analysis all over the place that it shows that companies that they are more culturally intelligent make more benefits. So
Mhm.
what is the company purpose? Is make money. So that's one question. A reason to just move into that direction. Another one is that it creates customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction. People feel good, and it
Right.
brings richness to your own company. So I think that is a win-win for everyone, but you need to really explain the benefits. Sometimes you have to start by that because most people, I mean, when it comes to culture, and then they mix it with immigration and with different items that
Yeah.
have nothing to do with that.
Right. Right, exactly. Yeah, I love this idea of, kind of having a conversation like, what does this mean? What does this all mean to you? And yeah, really, demonstrating the benefits, that can really be sometimes the most effective way to get that point across and really show the importance of a tool that can really bring innovation and inclusivity. And so love that answer. All right, I think we have time for one more. And I think I think this is an interesting question. I think this word potentially can be interpreted multiple ways, but this person is asking, if you kind of take into account, the cultural, beliefs and needs and challenges, kind of like the cultural experience. What role does the cultural experience really play when you're developing a marketing plan with calculated risks? I'm not sure if there's more information they can provide, but I think it's, interesting to maybe just, I'm wondering what your thoughts are on, that role of, yeah.
I think that the cultural experience is important. You have to make your own experience when you create your marketing tools, and but don't be fooled by the appearances at the beginning, because sometimes we already come with that already predetermined idea about how things could be, and
Yeah.
you might be surprised. That's what I always thinking, that focus groups are important, to just partner with local people and to surrounded by experts when you create your marketing plan, because at the beginning you might really not get the full information just based on your own experience. Just traveling somewhere doesn't mean that you understand the country. You can be, a lot of people think that they understand the United States. I have so many discussions with my friends because they just talk about the United States because they came 3 or 4 times and they think they understand the complexity of this market. But this market is not one market, it's many markets, because I mean, it's not the same thing to be in Seattle that to be in Florida, right? So I think every market also have different cultures inside of a market. So when you make a marketing plan, you have to make your own experiences, yes, but also understanding that inside of one culture, there is many subcultures.
Mhm. Wonderful, Bisila. This has been so incredible. If you had just one key takeaway or piece of wisdom that you wanted to leave with the audience, what would that be?
Well, I would say that in a global world, it's not the strongest of the spices that will survive, but the most culturally intelligent.
Love it. Amazing, Bisila. This has been so incredible, and you just gave such a wonderful overview of cultural intelligence. So thank you so much for your insight. And on behalf of the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and everyone here, we are just so thankful that you joined us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this opportunity, Michelle, to have this conversation with you. And if anyone wants to just go deeper into anything, if I could help, I would be happy to.
Wonderful. Awesome. We'll share some links to connect with Priscilla, check out her book. And to those in the audience, thank you all so much for joining us today. You can use those links that are going to be posted in the chat to view upcoming webinars that we have. And we look forward to welcoming you all back online with us soon.
Thank you.